And, welcome everybody. We're so delighted that you're here with us for our Wellness Innovate webinar. And of course, as you know, we've been talking a lot this is our 8th or 9th week now in a row. We've been offering these webinars, and the idea is really to focus on workplace mental health. No matter what your situation is in COVID, there has been a workplace impact. And typically, it's not often talked about, but that has a huge bearing on our mental health. So even if you're working from home, if you're one of the lucky ones, but I know many aren't lucky, and they've had, many have been laid off, and many have faced a lot of uncertainty through COVID. And so our desire has been, Connie and I in Wellness Innovate to support mental health. And so today we have one of the best with us who's going to share her wisdom and knowledge. And I'm going to just, throw, her picture up on the screen and her bio, or a little bit about her, but maybe Connie can actually do the introduction because she knows Leora much better than I do. So please go ahead, Connie.
Yeah, so Leora is just such a wonderful, lovely individual. We met for coffee before COVID hit downtown, and she is a registered nurse as well as the health and wellness specialist for programs at Cenovus. And when we chatted over coffee, I was so impressed. I left that meeting going, if that's who that company has in charge of health and wellness, then that company must be thriving, because her heart is to be genuine and to connect people. Absolutely phenomenal person. And could we just give a quick shout out to her home decor for just a moment? It's like those colors are even full of health and wellness and calm and relaxation. So we just want to welcome you here, Leora. We're so happy that you've joined us.
Thank you so much, Connie. I am honored, and apparently my dog is too. And I'm so sorry. He's never barky, but all of a sudden today it's like he realizes that something's going on. So, I think this is one of those instances where a few are on guard on, and now it's to the point where it's like, yeah, so the dog is barking, or the kids are running around, and you just let go of all those shields and accept what is and move on, because the dog barking is just what it is. And so thank you very much for having me. And yes, that is my role. And as I was telling you and Abe before this, is my focus over the last few weeks has really shifted into being very geared towards COVID and the preparedness planning and response planning. And so it's really fun for me to get back into the wellness aspect and into the mental health space, and thinking about this next phase of COVID and what's that going to look like, and how are we going to continue to support people and support each other through this next phase. And it's really interesting today, especially because we're on that very threshold of time between this last few weeks, which has been almost surreal, and now we're on this threshold of returning to a new normal. We're really not returning to normal, and I think normal is gone, and that's not a bad thing. There's a lot out there, and I'm fully of the opinion that normal, it wasn't awesome in a lot of respects. So my hope is that we're going to return to this new normal, and it's going to look different. But how do we ensure that we combine the pieces from the old normal as we can, with taking the lessons learned in these past few weeks? So that's my first thought here is, time has, for those of us who have been crazy busy at work or have not been, my first thought is take a moment before we journey into this next stage, which is imminent and happening quickly. Take a moment to reflect and investigate what has the last few weeks really looked like for you? What's your experience been? And where have the opportunities been in improving your life and your world? Oh my goodness. I'm just going to try and kick them out the house. So give me one moment here. So sorry.
You know, I have dogs too, and I'm always like Leora said, you're always on edge. You're just not sure. But now it's just normal, and I don't know if anyone has seen any of the funny memes going on or the videos of quarantine and Zoom meetings. I mean, it
I
really is.
haven't seen any of them actually. No, not even one, you know?
It's completely ironic. The irony is that I kicked my family out of the house. And so therein lies the problem,
That's
because the
awesome.
family is out the house, but the dogs are incredibly
Yeah.
upset. So,
And
you know,
one of
you
my
win some and you lose some.
one of my favorite was, nobody asked the dogs if they would be okay with COVID quarantine, right? And
Totally.
they used to have the house to themselves and only had to deal with us at certain times,
Totally. I love it.
We
Anyhow,
got we got a comment
back
here,
to my
Leora, that
thoughts.
somebody loves your wine rack. So
It's become a big joke throughout this time, is that people try and guess at the end of the day as to how many or which bottles are no longer there. But what they don't realize is they go from the bottom to the top and quickly replace them, so nobody has any idea. But back to my thoughts is, before we head into this next period, take a moment to really reflect and think about, what is it that you want to keep? Where is the value for you in the last few weeks? And what have you learned? And what's resonating with your soul that you want to hang on to? Now, obviously, we can't do that for everything. And for some things, we may not want to hold on to, and we want to get back into a routine. And for many of us, perhaps that is trying to look for meaningful work again. And I will touch on that, Abe, when we start thinking about the pillars of well-being. Um, but using this last day or two and just holding on to what's fitted for you, what's worked, before we move on, because hopefully, or not hopefully, we're not going to be back in the spot ever again. I mean, whoever thought that we were going to be in that spot? And I think it really resonated for me. So I live quite close to Fish Creek Park, and never have I used the park as much as I have in these last few weeks. It's really been quite a haven for me, actually. And there was something almost mystical about going down there and seeing the parking lot closed. And it was just like, okay, this is nature at its finest, right? Like, no cars, you could just be free down there. And then suddenly, one weekend, parking lot was just open. And it was like, huh, that's gone. So so I guess if I was going to ask you to take anything from today, is use these next couple of days to grab onto what you can. And if you can't grab onto, parking lots not opening or stores not opening, find the power in what you can control to keep things like they are. Um, so that's the first thing that I wanted to share in that regard. The second thing, in considering our well-being, our total well-being, and I'll get more into those pillars, like I say, but I think for those of us who are stuck, or those of us who are in a rut, we can really be quite overwhelmed with what we should be doing. What are the expectations? What is society telling me? What is the media telling me? What is Facebook telling me? I'm not productive right now. I'm not doing all I should. I haven't cleared out 16 rooms in my house. So maybe I'm not worthy right now. I really would suggest that the best way we can look after our mental health and our physical health right now is just stopping to ask yourself one question. And that one question is, what do I need in this moment? Because what you need in this moment may look very different from what you need in 10 minutes or in 4 hours. And, and and when you can ground yourself in that and come back to the present and be mindful of what do I need, I think that's the best way that we can get some semblance of control. And think about, in a time where so much is out of our control, that's a way that we can find what's in our control. And one of the big buzzwords, and I thank Karen McNeil, for anybody who knows her, she's just wonderful, for the term right now, which is control the controllables. So what's in your bubble to control? And oftentimes it's not much in the extrinsic world. We don't have control out of that. But what we can control is our response, and understanding that we can't change that. It's actually just a reality. So the best thing we can do is grab onto that reality and find the opportunity for how we're going to respond. And that's another one of my favorite takeaways, is if we can shift our perspective to, instead of reacting, how can I respond to this in my best way and with my best self forward? Which then brings me to considering the 5 pillars of well-being. And there's many models out there for wellness and well-being, and this is obviously a huge passion to me, and I could go on about this for a really long time. So I just want to bring an overview into well-being, and with that, just 5 key pillars of well-being, and considering so emotional, physical, social, workplace, and societal. And so just want to touch on, each of those and just go through highlights of things you can consider, because if we consider the analogy of a vehicle, it is possible for each of those components, and you can hear how I'm a nurse, so talking about vehicles or cars or technology is like really right out of my scope. But if you think about it in the sense where the engine might be running really, really well, and the transmission might be running really well, but if the brakes aren't working, guess what? Your vehicle is not roadworthy and cannot be on the road. So that very holistic approach for bringing your whole self forward is really important. So, and when we talk about bringing your whole self forward, it's not just for yourself. It's for your family. It's for your workplace. It's for your friends and your communities. And so let's go through each of those pillars and get some key insights. But yes, please, I did see the comment there about bringing any questions, and I'm happy to make this as interactive as possible. So Connie, do you want to stop me before I get going on, are there any questions right off the bat?
Well, yeah, please, and feel free. I really think what you mentioned about asking what we need is very important, as it also mentioned in the comments. Yeah, what do I need? I actually asked a group of people this more towards the beginning of COVID, and no one could answer that question. And it really tells us that we have, up until COVID, we lived in a society that just kept going and going and going. Who has time to really cultivate the inward parts and ask ourselves those pivotal questions? And so I just want to draw attention to That right there, Leora, you are, that is powerful to ask what we need.
Yeah, that's awesome, Connie. And I think, with that comes, I saw somebody making a comment about worthiness, and it is so true, and it resonates to me so deeply, because if we don't feel worthy, when we don't have the compassion and kindness to ourselves to offer a moment to go inwards, or even have the, for many people, I think we could all learn to develop and cultivate our own, um, thinking about our own emotions. And you're right. I mean, so much of the busyness is, we run on adrenaline, and we run on the must do and must get to and must accomplish and must be productive. And in the end, it really begs the question of, what are we losing out on by running that way? And what are our families losing out on? And it's so very surface without getting down deeper into our true selves. So that's, I really, really appreciate that. And we'll touch more on that, because the first pillar is in that emotional well-being. And I think this is the part that many of us struggle with. And I would offer that it's been a component that has been particularly challenging during this time. Um, with emotional well-being comes the ability to manage stress appropriately. We know that we can't get rid of stress, and we're never going to get rid of stress. And neither would we fully want to, because stress is a perception. It's an experience that we all have. And for many of us, if we can flip our switch and our story, stress can also be incredibly motivational. And it can keep us going and get us going. So it's more about your experience with that stress. And how do we learn to be resilient? And again, resilient is a huge buzz term, and for really, really good reason, because we know that we cannot stop that stress. And in fact, as we've learned in the last few weeks, it's going to keep increasing. Things are going to keep increasing. And so it's more of, when I think about resilience, I think of the analogy of a tree. And a tree, in its strength and in its grandeur, it doesn't mean that it can't bend in the wind. It means that it should bend in the wind. And when the wind stops, or when the wind stops for a period of time, the tree can come back up and straighten back up. And that's what we want to learn to do. We want to be able to bend and shift and still come back up and rise up, perhaps stronger than we were before the storm. We have the power to generate emotions that are positive. And another takeaway here is, we shouldn't be in the position where we judge our emotions. I hope that what we've learned over these last few weeks is, there's no good or bad or positive or negative. It just is. And that acceptance of it just is, and that is okay. If you are having an emotion, and all of a sudden you start crying, that is your body telling you that that's what you needed at that moment. And that is absolutely okay. That is not bad, and that is not good. It just is. So detaching from that emotion, and just knowing that it's there, and what can be done about it, what should be done about it. Maybe it's just nothing that should be done about it, and it just is. And we move on to the next emotion. Um, some of the skills that we can develop in this area are around positive thinking, about mindfulness, optimism, gratitude, happiness. The research out there is just immense and phenomenal. And I think as we continue to evolve, um, this is the power that we're going to have, is to use this skill building in this area to help us to move forward and move on, and really use the research. And you look at a practice like meditation that's been around for centuries, and in all religions and cultures, and for such good reason. If we can grab onto that and realize the potential that we have to, change our brains and change our physiology, it's huge. Like, that's where the power lives. And again, not succumbing to the pressure of society and what it tells you, and spending 40 minutes on your chair in a certain position and putting the pressure on yourself in that way, but grabbing onto what resonates for you. And maybe it's 5 minutes of stillness when you're outside in the nature, or 5 minutes that's realistic at the end of your day. That's the power that we have. And yes, there is ideal practice out there. And yes, there is, an ideal amount of time where we may see that telomere extension activity happening at the neurological level, which is incredible. But what works for you? And what's gonna fit into your lifestyle and your abilities? So grabbing onto that. But when we think about what we can control, it's being faced in a situation and thinking, okay, how do I flip this switch from, here's the reality, I don't like it, it's making me really uncomfortable, to, where's the power that I have to see the positive and the opportunity for this? Think about, for me, I think there's many of us who can attest to this. I'm quite controlling in nature. So this last, 9-10 weeks is going to be, it's almost like a test from the universe every day of, okay, here you go, one more thing at you, how are you going to deal with that? And I've really learned to stop and ask myself the question of, okay, what can I control? How can I flip the story so that I can respond versus react? And those practices of positive thinking, optimism, gratitude, the happiness, trying to find joy in whatever we can, is a huge opportunity for us, both, for the past 10 weeks, but as we move forward. Because let's face it, even as we move forward and as we move into reopening, we're still going to be extremely challenged with this new normal and things not looking like we may perceive them to look, or should look, or have looked, because they're not going to look that way again. So this is the space where, going forward, I see we have enormous opportunities to work on, and that's really in our control, and we can seize the opportunity to develop in this area of well-being.
What a gift, actually, when you think about it, to come back to a resetting, so that when we do move forward, this is our foundation, rather than striving, stress, deadlines, success, whatever we define that to be. These things are contributing to our mental state in such a negative way. And so what you're saying here is a foundation that, we don't want to just do to get through COVID. We want this to be the foundation of our lives in general, case closed with a period. And then whatever happens next. And Amy is asking here, any tips about feeling shame? There's a loop. She's feeling ashamed and letting someone down 2 years ago. I mean, these things come up in these times.
They absolutely come up. And Oh, I really appreciate that. And thank you for that vulnerable comment and question, because it is hugely vulnerable. And I really appreciate that sharing. And I think, one of my favorite analogies when it comes to mental health is we can shove all of these things in. So I like to think about it like a laundry bag. And you can keep shoving things in and shoving things in and keep dealing with things and keep coping. And one day, likely when it's not convenient at all, that laundry bag is going to rip open and everything is going to come flying out in a million different directions. And you look at a situation like COVID, where we're feeling enormously out of control, we're feeling enormously anxious and stressed and uncertain, and we don't have those coping mechanisms in place. So challenges and negative experiences are going to be extremely heightened during this phase. And so, this question being raised makes perfect sense, because we may have had a previous situation or a previous experience all the way from childhood where we may have experienced trauma and it's unresolved, and it's starting to show through in the cracks right now that are happening as a result of these really difficult times for people. So that comment about feeling shame right now, it is so valid and so true, and probably shared by so many. I think people are significantly struggling with finding self-worth and value, and then you see the products of shame. And one of my favorite suggestions, one of my favorite people in the space of shame is Brene Brown. So I would encourage for the Oscar of that question that you check out Brene Brown and her numerous books and TED Talks. And right now, I'm just obsessed with Brene Brown's podcast. And using that to help reframe, but then also concentrating on all the various pillars of your well-being, so that if you can find worthiness in other areas, and if you can find and feel good and find ways to feel accomplished and productive. And one of the biggest things that comes to mind for me, Connie, is when we think about shame and worthiness, it's self-esteem, and it's the self-love and the compassion and the kindness to ourselves, which is in my key points to address. And I may touch on it right now because it's come up, but throughout this entire experience, if I want to give you one takeaway from today, it's be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to everyone around you, because, and we hear this over and over again, but it's so true, you don't know what anybody else is experiencing. And sometimes what we're perceiving they're experiencing, because they're angry or they're yelling or it's more of they're actually incredibly scared, or they're feeling incredibly overwhelmed or unsure of themselves. And so it's coming out in a different way to others. So, in talking about shame, be kind to yourself. Find ways to increase your self-esteem, to increase your confidence. Reach out, form connections, find your people, find those people who are going to listen to you. And often it's not even that you need advice. Sometimes it's just the benefit of getting it off your chest. So thank you for that question.
One of the things that's really hit me is the things that people brought into COVID, COVID has really amplified, and I think that it's interesting because COVID is the great accentuator, but the other thing that occurs to me, and I'm all over kindness, and it's one of my values. But the word kindness itself, it comes from the word kin, right? And kin, speaks to a sense of connection. My family is my kin, my tribe is my kin. And when you have that sense of kinship, what happens is the natural outflow is kindness. I mean, I have a 5-year-old daughter. No one has to say, be kind to her. Well, why? Because she's my kin, And I think one of the challenges today is we have so much division, and somehow we've told ourselves this mantra that if I don't agree with everything you believe, or if I don't see the world the way you see it, that you're not part of my kin. And one of the things I try to get into people's minds is, like even within families, we have difference of opinion. And rather than erecting walls, let's erect bridges, right? And let's stay kind. But I always find, like, when we say to people, well, be kind, well, there's a reason why they're not kind. It's because they don't feel like they're kin. And if we can sort of rekindle sorry, the sense of kinship, then that will lead to kindness, and so I think, COVID is the great equalizer. And because, obviously it doesn't respect borders, it doesn't respect income, it doesn't, Prime Minister of Britain, one of the most powerful countries in the world, gets this COVID. And so maybe talk to us about how, people can build more community.
I love that, Abe. I really love that. And I'll jump ahead then to kind of that fifth pillar, which is the societal pillar. And thinking about, and you're right, I can't remember what your term is for COVID, but for me, I think of COVID as the thing that happened that came and grounded us. It just grounded us and equalized us, and it put us at the same level. And actually, what I've really observed is something very positive, that when we talk about the stigma associated with mental health, what I've found through COVID is inorganically, it's taking away that stigma, because suddenly we're kind of all at the same level. And so we feel very free to say, oh, like, I'm really anxious today, or I'm feeling really sad today, or look, I really need to seek support. And you know what? Like, I haven't slept in 2 weeks. So if we think about COVID as a whole and what it's done, I actually see COVID as having a very positive outcome for stigma reduction.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about that societal aspect, huge key to well-being, and it's that interconnectedness and that thought of belonging to something greater than just us. It's not just us, and it's moving from a me to a we. And that is so important, especially when it comes to COVID, because it's affecting us all and it's impacting us all. Now, with that said, I think I just wanted to interject here, because one of the other things I've really observed is this whole notion of, well, we're all in this together. And while that is certainly true, and we are also having very unique experiences and going through this very uniquely. So I think it's really important that we remain very non-judgmental in that space, and very open to accepting that what you may be experiencing is very different to what your neighbor is experiencing. And again, it comes down to kindness and just a respect that we are not the same and we're never going to be the same. And actually, it's one of the best weapons as society or as a workplace that we have, is that we are not meant to be the same. We are meant to come with our unique identities and our unique strengths and our colors and our ideas and our different thoughts. And it's in those differences that we are better together. And another one of my key observations during this time is, as I'm completely A-type and controlling, for anybody who may not have already had that thought or idea, what I've learned during COVID is that actually on my own, I can hardly do anything because I'm only one human and I'm very limited. But together as a group, as a community, as a team in a workplace, as a team in your house, as a team in your community, we can accomplish miracles. And we have, right? You just take a moment to look around or look in your workplace or look at you guys. Look at what you've done in 8 weeks for your community. I mean, it's completely inspiring how groups like you, like you're, it's inspiring how we've come together for the benefit of everybody. And so if you can take away anything, it's that notion of how this has brought us together. So I think that's my, real keys when it comes to society. And back to that shame and that worthiness, if you're looking for something right now and you're not in the spot where you have a job, or maybe have a job but work is kind of dried up, because I think many people are in that position, in order for you to continue to feel productive and wholesome and thriving, I urge you to consider, what can you do for your community? What can you give? How can you serve right now? And I've heard that so many times in the last few weeks is, I feel the need to serve. And what can I do? And use this as an opportunity to expand into horizons that you otherwise wouldn't have, because either you didn't have the time, or you didn't know how, or you didn't, let's be honest, you may not have cared really, and not for any bad reason, you just may not have. Whereas now we're in a position where, and there is so much opportunity. So think about how we can move from the me to the we in this time where it's needed more than ever before.
Yeah.
And it can be simple things. I think sometimes when people think serve, it's like, oh, I don't even know where to start. But one of the things that our community does is we do a birthday parade. And I love it. Every Saturday morning, there's like 30 cars that go through our community, all decorated with balloons, and they're honking. There's even somebody who owns a bus in our community. And they go around and they go up streets where people have had their birthdays. And I'm thinking, that is so simple. And
It's
yet,
so simple.
posts on our Facebook community group, people are crying. They're so touched. And so I think sometimes you don't have to go big or go home. It could be so simple. It could just be knowing your neighbor. Like, these things matter. Thank you for bringing.
That's exactly. And that is so true, Connie. Like, this doesn't have to be an altruistic, get on our platitudes of, it doesn't have to be like that. It's something as simple as going for a walk through your community and seeing the kids doodling with chalk on the driveway that says, thank you to the essential workers, or keep strong, or whatever it is that just causes somebody to have a thought that makes somebody else feel good. Right? It's just something as simple as that. So thank you for bringing that up. That's amazing. I'm going to touch on, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't touch on the physical aspect of our well-being, and something incredibly dear to me, and just by background, I'm an occupational health nurse and a certified fitness and yoga instructor too. So thinking about what we can control, and I don't want to get into this because I think many of us know what we should be doing when it comes to our physical well-being, and
Well, you've got wine
And
on the back wall, so
I
that's a
got
good
wine.
indication.
Exactly. I know what I should be doing for my physical. That's more for my emotional well-being, Abe. I don't think my physical well-being appreciates that too much. But, there is some antioxidants that come from the wine. It's okay. Everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation.
Exactly. But when it comes to our physical health, just really thinking about those key fundamental things of, and it's I want to get away from the concept of physical activity or exercise, really frame it for folks as more of a movement. Think about movement, and I think this is really an area that we're struggling with, especially those of us who are working from home in ergonomic setups that are not optimal for our health. And people are struggling with musculoskeletal aches and pains, and a lot of that is actually just caused from decreased movement because we're not getting up and we're not running out for coffee and or walking to the printer or walking to chat with our coworker. And that's going to have impacts on us for many reasons down the road. So both for our physical health, which we know the importance of exercise and in every component of every system that we have in our body, but actually just for movement and the power in what we can control for our emotional and psychological health when it comes to movement. So again, with that notion of be kind to yourself, be patient, but be very intentional about how you're taking care of your physical health right now. And make sure that you are doing whatever that activity or whatever that movement, whatever that exercise looks like for you. Make sure that it's resonating and it's feeling good and you're listening to your body and you're not feeling pressured in one way or another, because I think for many it can go the opposite way right now where people are over exercising and they're feeling like they're maybe eating differently or indulging a little bit. So don't be cautious not to go the other way when it comes to exercise too, and don't use exercise as a punishment. um, Find what is speaking to you right now, and that enough said. And I think we can no longer use the excuse of we don't have time or there's nothing available, because I think yes, gyms are closed and that may have caused a barrier up front, but as another one of the tremendous positive results of this, there is just a wealth of access to fitness offerings right now, whether it be online classes, whether it be funky hip hop classes, whether it be going for a walk and getting that nature time in time that you otherwise would have spent commuting and being stuck sitting in a vehicle. Use whatever that is, use that time to be very intentional about how you're taking care of your physical health, because it's going to impact your emotional well-being immensely. And that said, the same for your sleep, the same for your nutrition. And Connie, I know I could go on about nutrition for hours because it's so dear to my heart, but what I want people to be very cognizant of is the direct connection between what you're putting into your body and what you're expecting to get out. So again, be very intentional. And it's not to say that, you should become a mastered registered dietitian and understand on that level. Again, it's very simple. Find what you know is going to provide you with nutritional value, but also listening to your body right now. And we may find ourselves craving those carbohydrates and more of the kind of fatty and sugary foods. And that is legitimately because under stress, our body requires extra calories. So give it what it needs and what it's asking for. And if you sink down into, getting back to yourselves and back to where we went earlier in that conversation, if you take a moment to listen to what your body needs, it's telling you for good reason. I need extra nutrients because I'm incredibly stressed, or you're working harder than ever, so your brain is going through um, calories like crazy, and you need to replenish that.
Yeah.
Um, but also watch for, is your body just craving that because it's a coping mechanism, or because you're bored, or potentially your ability to make the right decision right now is not working as well as it should be because of the stress. So watch for that. And maybe, again, come back to that question of, what do I need right now? Do I actually need that food because I'm hungry? Or do I actually need that food because I'm feeling bored, or I'm feeling antsy, or perhaps just going for a 15-minute walk is going to switch my thought, and that's going to feel much better for me in the long run. Another key component is staying hydrated. Critically important right now. Stay hydrated. And something I heard last week, which really resonated, is the lights in our house are, for the most part, single spectrum lighting, not like our offices, and they're extremely dehydrating. So please be sure, the general thought out there is 8 glasses of water, whatever works for you. But we know we struggle in this area. So in considering your nutrition, please consider your hydration. And maybe it's not that snack you need, but it's a glass of water that you in fact need.
This is everything for me right now, Leora. Like you're like nailing me on the head. And I don't know if anyone else is feeling this too, but Emotional Eater, Anonymous, they should create a group right here, and just to be reminded that what we put in our body will affect our mind and our emotions. And we're not trying to join the sexy mama club by the end of COVID. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is to remain strong, put nutrients, minerals that will feed our soul and our minds and our hearts right now. And so thank you, because I need this reminder. I have children who love junk food, and I have to have vegetables cut up in the fridge.
Yes.
Every Sunday.
Yes.
I prepare all my food so that their food, because they get they buy their own stuff sometimes, and I have to have that, or else I will so quickly go to those things.
Exactly. And you hit it, Connie. And that's one of my strategies, is make sure you're prepared, because if you're prepared and you have those cut up fruits and vegetables, you're going to be much more inclined to reaching for that versus grabbing, the packaged junk food snack. And I'm also a huge firm believer in the 80-20% rule. And right now, again, with that notion of be kind, if you feel you need to have that junk food, or for me, it's the chocolate, or, that one glass of wine, or whatever that looks like, accept that and really mindfully enjoy that. Don't shove it down your throat and not even realize that you've eaten it, because then you're not even going to get the value out of it. So let yourself have that. Let yourself have the junk food, the chocolate, the wine in moderation, and not using it as, a negative coping technique. But the 80% of the time, be sure you're making that good choice. And I think I've touched on all of them except for the workplace. And this is obviously a big theme. And what I want to draw on here is, for those of us who don't have a connection to a workplace right now, or a job, or we're really struggling with filling this part of our well-being, because we know that, this is the area that really matters to us, and that we all have this inherent need to feel and feel like we have a meaningful meaningful and purposeful life. So if you're in that position where you don't have that opportunity to feel connected in a workplace and to feel accomplished, think about what you can do that's still going to bring that same sense of accomplishment, and develop professional skills and your expertise. And maybe this is your opportunistic time to grow and learn new skills that you otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. And again, much like the exercise online, there is a wealth of free courses and free resources. And I urge people with whatever capacity you have to reach out and grab a hold of the opportunities that are in front of us right now for that skills development, and so that when the opportunity presents itself in a professional job or role, or you're going to be better equipped to handle that new role because you would have really used this time and seized the opportunities that exist to develop your skills. And if it's not, it's not to say that you have to have a job to be doing something meaningful and productive and using skills. So whether it's going out and seeking volunteer opportunities that exist right now, something else Brene Brown talks about, which I always hold dear to my heart, is she calls it the slash job. And she talks about, often when we introduce ourselves, we'll say, yeah, I'm Leora, I'm a nurse. But that's actually not, for me, I'm incredibly fortunate because I do find myself in a role and a career that absolutely resonates with my heart and my soul. But many people are not in a job that it fulfills them. But we're too afraid to say, I sew quilts and sell them on Pinterest, but actually I'm an accountant by day. So I'm going to say, oh yeah, I'm Joe and I'm an accountant at blah, blah, blah corporation. But that accounting job doesn't fill Joe's soul. We're just too afraid to say that, we sew quilts and sell it on Pinterest. So think about this opportunity right now. If you're not, working, or you're not in a job, or you're not connected potentially in that area, think about what else speaks to your heart. What else can you do? How can you use this time to build on professional skills, and think about professional networks? And if you don't have a job, do you have an opportunity to join in a professional network or a professional group? Stay relevant, stay up to date, keep your licenses and your registrations and some of those courses that you could be doing, so that when opportunities present, you're just ready to go. So those are my 5 key pillars. I think, my last takeaway is, for me, what's really important when it comes to our health and our mental well-being is have a growth mindset and look at things for what they are, and always try and flip that story that your mind is always going to tell you as a protective mechanism to find the flaws and find how you need to fight or flight, because that's what our brain naturally does to protect us. Flip the switch and search for the opportunity, search for the meaning, figure out, how can I turn this to be a positive experience? For me, that's just where the opportunity lies.
So good. It's great. So, just as we're mindful of our time here and drawing things to a close, you've shared so many great things, Leora. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts, any final nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to share with the folks who have joined us here today?
Yeah, I think I have kind of 7 key ways that I try and flip to that growth mindset. And the first way is begin the day with positive expectations. set your day up right. What is that first thing you're going to do in the morning? How are you gonna set this day up right? Whether that's a walk, whether that's a meditation, a podcast, start your day right. The second one is, I urge you to think about, again, coming to that kindness. Go in with the expectation that everybody's trying their best. Everybody is trying their best. The third one is that gratitude piece. Be thankful that no matter where you are and no matter where you thought you should be or how you think things should look, just be thankful for how things are. Next, I think seize what you can to take control of yourself. Find the happiness, find the joy, get rid of any expectations or keeping up in ways that aren't meaningful for you. Focus on solutions. Again, control the controllables. Where's the opportunity? And not trying to start at the bottom and climb an impossible mountain, but what small step can I take right now that's going to move me to the next step? Right now, what can I do? Avoid other people's problems. And I think this is something especially for those of us who are empaths and struggling with COVID, and just don't, not that you shouldn't be kind or empathetic or compassionate, but set your own boundaries and be very firm about what your boundaries look like. The next is avoid the media. Be conscious about what you're taking in and protecting your own energy. And then, lastly, the simplest level, find ways to make yourself smile and to make others smile. And if you can go around with that intention, I think you're winning.
That's great. I love, I don't know about you, I love to win. I don't always win, that's for sure. But, if you give me a choice, winning or losing, I'll probably, take winning. But I think, here we're not competing against someone else. In some ways, we're competing against our own bad habits, right? And our own sort of mental loops that can get us in a lot of trouble. So thank you so much, Leora. We know that for folks in your role, COVID has not been a vacation or a chance to binge watch. It's been the exact opposite. And so thank you for taking your time, and really, really good. So Connie, any final thoughts? And then I'll just share one or two quick things as we conclude.
Yes, I just, Leora, I want to thank you so much. Honestly, I just go back to that time with you and I realize just what a gift you are. You really, everything you've said today is, you just carry it. And we just appreciate you because you, like many frontline workers, you are on the front lines of your company and making sure that employees are well taken care of. And we just want to honor you and thank you for doing that today.
Thank you so much, Connie. And I mean, me personally, I hate all of that. You'll see me blushing and I can hear my amazing leader laughing and saying, Leora will blush if you say anything but thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you for letting me be here. It's a true honor and it comes down to my need to serve. So whatever I can do and whatever I can offer during this time, and with that, if anybody wants to reach out, or Connie knows how to reach me, if anybody has any questions or just wants to chat or discuss, I'm happy to help in whatever way I can.
That's so great. Thanks so much, Leora. And thank you, Connie. And, obviously, as we conclude here today, at Wellness Innovate, I mean, our hope is really, in this small way to give back as much as we sort of meaningfully can. We believe that, COVID is adversity. I don't know any better way to describe it, and I love what Leora said, and somebody, I think it was Cynthia, said in the comment box that we're we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. And so everyone's experiencing this differently. But, you know, in the middle of that adversity, in the middle of that storm, there's always opportunity, right? I mean, the greatest businesses on earth and frankly, some of the greatest opportunities ever happen in the toughest times. And so, you know, for those of you who might be in organizations or in businesses who think, you know, I want to support my team. You know, I just encourage you to reach out to myself or to Connie at Wellness Innovate. You know, we've been doing a lot of work with organizations. Here's just some of the topics that we've been covering. You know, everything from leading through trauma to communication in crisis to self-care. You know, the reality is that, you know, COVID has caused a huge degree of focus on physical safety, as it should. But in a session with a business owner today who has about 70 employees and restaurants, it was interesting to talk about psychological safety in the middle of COVID. And what does that really mean? You know, how can you both focus on the physical safety component, which is actually very important, but also focus on the psychological safety? Because when your people feel safe and when you have paid attention to their mental health, there will be an absolute return on that investment with respect to business outcomes, you know. But, you know, you're the leader, you're the manager, you're the owner. You've got to make that investment first and let your people know how valuable they are. So please consider that. You know, Connie's pretty easy to reach. I'm pretty easy to reach. And you can find us at wellnessinnovate.com. So thanks so much. One thing that we wanted to let you know is next week we have Amy Lynn Crawford. Amy Lynn is she's a marketing expert and really heart-centered. I mean, you can probably just tell from her picture, she is, you know, not glitz and glam. She's just all about authenticity. But, you know, one of the ways she describes herself, and this is why we wanted to have her on, is she describes herself as a chronic illness warrior. I love that. I don't love chronic illness, but I love the energy around being a warrior. And obviously, all of that, you know, sort of immunocompromised, you know, COVID has heightened, and she's a business owner, she's an entrepreneur. So she's going to come and share some of her wisdom. And we want to also give you a sneak peek because on June 3rd, we at Wellness Innovator are going to be hosting another online conference. This one will be called Pivot. And you can see we've got some pretty impressive speakers there. One of them is Jason Luan, the Honorable Jason Luan, who's the Associate Minister for Mental Health and Addiction here in the province of Alberta. Also, some of you may have heard of Merit Nenshi, and we're really delighted that he's going to be speaking. We also have some for-profit business leaders and some not-for-profit leaders who are going to be talking about, you know, how it is leaders and businesses can pivot in this time while paying a lot of attention to the mental health component of all of this. And so, you know, go to Eventbrite if you can and search for Pivot. That's June 3rd in Calgary. And you get your ticket for free. So there's no cost. But because we have a couple of great nonprofit CEOs who are going to be joining us, we are encouraging folks to consider making a donation. One of them, Hall Family Services, does work with literally thousands of Calgarians. And then the other, I'm sure many of you heard of Fresh Start Recovery Center, and they have been such a critical part of a journey from addiction and into recovery for, again, thousands of Albertans. And so we don't need, we're not looking to make money through this, but we sure would love to see these great nonprofits experience some great outcomes as a result of that. So please join us for that. And on that note, thank you everybody for today. And thanks again, Leora. You're the bomb. You're awesome. And we appreciate your time today. And hopefully we'll all stay in touch and stay connected, okay? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you.
You're awesome, Leah.